So I'm going to go ahead and enter task number 2. I'm going to be working with numeric functions, and the first one we're going to be working with is RAND. So in the lecture, I do explain how it works, and I'm going to kind of pull this over here because RAND actually exists in all sorts of languages, not just SQL, and it retrieves a number between 0 and 1, but the number is like a pseudo-random number, so it's really not random unless you give it a seed value. So what we're going to do to seed RAND is we're going to use new ID, and that gives us a unique identifier. And then we're going to run that unique identifier through checksum, which is an algorithm which is going to give us another unique number. It's a computed value. So normally RAND is a number between 0 and 1. When we add the checksum and the new ID to RAND, we are seeding it, and we're still going to have a number between 0 and 1. Usually if you want a random number, it's not a number between 0 and 1 that you want. So we can multiply it by the maximum number we want. So if we multiply by 100, we will have a number between 0 and 100. Okay? It's still going to have decimal places. So typically, if you are using RAND, you just want whole numbers. So you're going to multiply it by the maximum, and then we are going to convert it to an integer. So we put all of this inside a cast. We add as integer. That will actually give us a random number between 0 and 100 that is a whole number with no decimals. Okay, so now that you know all of that, we are going to be working with this to randomly retrieve investors and check their data. We have 5 investors, and their IDs range from 1 to 5. So we need to randomly generate numbers 1 through 5 that will pull rows or records from our table so we can check them. So instead of using a cast, what we're going to do is we're going to use the ceiling function, and that will round the value up. So normally we'd have a number between 0 and 5 if we multiply by 5. But when we use ceiling, it rounds it up to the closest whole number. So if it was a decimal below 1, it's going to round it to 1. And that will give us the random numbers 1 through 5 that we want. So I'm going to pause while I key this in, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at the code and run it. So I'm using examples, I'm selecting everything from investors, and so where I've got this random number is in the filter, which is my where clause. So I'm looking at investor ID, checking for the ID equal to, so here's my seed value. Okay, I'm using RAND. I'm going to have a number between 0 and 5 that includes decimal places. But because I stuck it inside ceiling, it will round it up to the nearest whole number. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. And I got investor 4. And I'm going to run it again. And now I have investor 1. And if I run it each time, I should notice the investors are changing. And what we do have is a random number. So I'm going to go ahead and move the closing comment down. So that's just a neat way of randomly checking your rows, making sure that your data is accurate. For our next number function, our boss wants to see the total investments for each investor in the investors table. The total should be rounded to display with 0 decimal places. Our boss also wants a grand total displayed for the investments, net gain, and total investment calculation. And all values should be rounded to display with 0 decimals. So we are going to go ahead and enter our query. And I'm going to pause while I type this in. So what I've done is I've just keyed it in without round first, and we're going to run it. So you can kind of see what it looks like. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and add round to it. And so for sum, inside the left parenthesis, I'm going to add round. Whoops, helps if you spell it right. And then after investments, I'm going to key in comma 0. And we'll do the same thing for net gain. So inside the parenthesis, I'm keying in round. And then after net gain, I'm going to do the comma 0. And we'll do the same thing over here for investments plus net gain. So I'm going to use round. Then after the calculation, comma 0. So this is what it looks like now, and we're going to go ahead and execute. Okay, and you'll notice that we no longer have the values in the decimal. It has actually either rounded them up or down. And I'm going to go ahead and move this down and save my changes.